Hello, Bradley08 here with the first of a set of, not demonstrations, but tactical summations, shall we say, of Arsenal's games during the season. As you can see, we are indulging in the highest tech that we can find, where I'm going to hopefully give you an idea of what happens during a game and how Arsenal found trouble, especially in last night's game against West Brom, but also how they were able to fix it, adapt, and how those adaptations and how those adjustments managed to make Arsenal's performance in the second half a lot better than what it was in the first half. And the best way we can start is how the two teams lined up. As you can see on our multi-million pound graphic that we've put together, West Brom very clearly set up 5-3-1-1, and on paper it looks like they're just going to put as many lads at the back as possible, as we have seen at the Emirates time after time after time. But in fact, it was far from that. Canu was pushed way up the pitch. Rodriguez was hounding players, so was Krikowiak, so was Barry, so was Livermore, and the plan was not to get in front of Arsenal and make sure they couldn't get to pass the ball the way they wanted it, but was to get around Arsenal in almost a basketball sense of blocking passing lanes and interfering with what Arsenal's plan was. And for 45 minutes it worked brilliantly. It genuinely worked brilliantly, and mainly because this man. If Xhaka has the room and the time to be Arsenal's metronome, to be the lad who can knock the ball to Kolasinac who bombs on up, or knock the crossfield pass to Bellerin who bombs on up, then Arsenal are really good. Arsenal can play at the tempo that they want to play it, they can dictate the game. But if Xhaka doesn't have time and doesn't have the ability to put balls where he wants, then Arsenal struggle. And for 45 minutes, Arsenal struggled almost to get the ball out of their own half at times, primarily because of this. Xhaka was there, deep in his usual role, trying to be the quarterback, so to speak, and Elneny, for the first half, was doing his best Francis Coquelin impression, which was to get the ball and then just pass it to someone immediately and then hide. And the result of that was that anytime Xhaka had the ball, Canu would come right behind him and make sure that he couldn't turn, so that whichever way Xhaka was facing, he had to pass the ball. And then if Kolasinac was there, Livermore wouldn't even press Xhaka, he would just get in the way. If Xhaka wanted to pass it on Elneny, Rodriguez was in the way. If he wanted to pass it to Alexis, Barry was in the way. Krikowiak could go there, Gibbs would get in the way there. And then suddenly Xhaka was, even though his pass completion was way up, Kolasinac would have to come back to get the ball, and he'd get it on his left foot facing this way instead of facing that way. And then he might get the ball, but he'd be tracking back and he might get it on his left foot instead of his preferred right. Alexis would then have to come back deeper to get the ball. Ramsey had to come back deeper to get the ball. And now suddenly West Brom are there with Arsenal the ball there. Like, it was almost as if Arsenal were playing away from home. West Brom were pushing up. No fear of, a big long ball behind the back, because Alexis and Ramsey, Arsenal's two supposed shadow strikers or centre forwards, were too far deep, and Lacazette was being marked by Evans. There was no need to sit back. And time and again, Xhaka's balls were grand, but if Elneny didn't get it straight to his feet, it took a second for him to control it, and then Krikowiak was in. If he went to Bellerin, and it went to Bellerin's left foot, then it took Bellerin a second to control it, and by the time he had, Gibbs was there. So for 45 minutes, West Brom were able to contain Arsenal to an extent. Yes, Arsenal scored, but Arsenal really only scored because any time Xhaka was able to get the ball past this wall of centre midfielders and into Alexis, Dawson would clatter him and they get free there. Evans would clatter Lacazette and they got free there, and Higazi would clatter Ramsey and they got free there. It was only very rarely that Arsenal were actually able to get in behind the back line of West Brom. They did it once, but only because Alexis, when he was there, found an absolute peach of a ball for Ramsey, who ran through that little space. But that was it. There was no other occasion where Arsenal were able to to break through because they simply didn't have the numbers. You know, West Brom were doing a fine job of cutting Arsenal off at almost at the neck. You know, they were saying, you're not making the passes you want to make, so we're going to force you to make passes that compromise your game plan. And again, for 45 minutes, it worked. Because West Brom went 1-0 down, but should have been at least drawing, if not leading. You know, the penalty when Robinson Canu takes out Koscielny here, Rodriguez goes straight through, and Mustafi does what Mustafi always does, which is panic. Takes out Rodriguez, you know, hits the post, should have been a penalty, and then Livermore is, you know, diving, coming through the middle because, you know, Jack is not going to catch him. And then even for when Monreal, you know, cleared off the line, 10 minutes later, same thing. Mustafi was in the middle of nowhere. You know, we were saying that Mustafi had his best game at Chelsea last week. This was one of his worst because for 45 minutes he had no clue where to stand. So, what changed? Well, as much as I'd like to say it was a complicated move, it wasn't. As I said at the start, West Brom's plan was to get in the way of all the passes that Xhaka was trying to make, and for 45 minutes it worked, but Arsenal made a very simple addition to their attack. They told El Neni to get on his bike. Basically, they said, stop being Coquelin, be yourself, and do that. And when we lose the ball, get back. And what it meant was this. Rodriguez now had to mark Elneny, which meant Xhaka was now there. Monreal could push up a small bit, Koscielny could push up a small bit, Kolasinac could go there, Bellerin could go there, and suddenly you can have all four there all you want. You can't cover all of them. And Arsenal were starting to build a little bit of pressure and keep the ball better than they were in the first half, just because if Krajkovic went there, Bellerin came back and the ball was there. If Krajkovic went to Xhaka then was able to go all the way, even though was able to go there to Kolasinac. And if Liverpool did that, the ball would go to Alexis, and then Alexis is in. So it sounds simple, but Elneny being 10-15 yards ahead and not being in the same position all the time was crucial to Arsenal doing what they always want to do, which is threaten an overlap, but actually attacking the other side. And I'll give you an example, because what they were doing was this. And then he often ended up there, and on the face of it, you can kind of see what they're trying to do. Get Gibbs to do that, so Bellerin can go there. But that's actually the decoy. What they're trying to do is get Evans and Dawson and Liam to go that side, go that way, to go towards the threat, because they want to cover this. Xhaka then gives the ball to Kolasinac, Liam goes there, Kolasinac gives the ball to Alexis, and now you're in trouble. Because now Dawson has to do that, Evans has to do that, Hegazi has to do that, Gibbs has to do that. And then Alexis plays the ball we always see Alexis play, which is whoop, to Ramsey, who's doing that, to Elneny, who's doing that to make sure Gibbs goes there, and then Bellerin's free as well. And about once in the first half they tried this, but it didn't work because, again, Elneny wasn't there. So Gibbs had no reason to move over, because Hegazi had that covered, and Lacazette was covered by Evans. But now that Elneny was there, they don't have the numbers to come back. At this point, this is an hour in, Livermore is exhausted because he's been chasing all game. Canu is exhausted because he's chasing all game, which gives Xhaka that extra second and a half that he needs to pick out the right ball. And then it was just tapping at the door. It was just drip pressure. Every time Alexis got the ball, Neom had to come close, and Dawson had to come close, which means one of two things: either A, Kolasinac gets in, and you're screwed, or Neom doesn't close, and then is Alexis one-on-one against Dawson. And we saw 3 or 4 times where there was one time where Alexis did a turn, That's Lacazette. Alexis did a turn, went in that way. Dawson closed, Nyom closed. Alexis went boop boop and went around them, and the two of them are done. And Evans had to do that. Hegati had to do that. Gibbs had to do that. And then Bellerin and Ramsey just went around the back, and then Alexis plays that ball, that outside to in ball. And Nyom and Dawson spent 25 minutes worrying their backsides off about Alexis. So when these two swapped, get Ramsey in there, they both took their they both took a breather. They both took their eye off the ball for a second. And when Lacazette went there, Dawson did that. Kolasinac runs up the ball, gives it to Ramsey, who's there. Nyom is asleep for a second because he's marking Lacazette because they've all moved over to the right. Ramsey gets in, Nyom can't catch him, penalty. And that's the difference between the numbers game. That's the difference between Elneny being there and it being almost 5-on-5 at times, and Elneny being there and the defence having to make an adjustment, and then our players being aware of making the right run to drag these players out of position. Because if that's Giroud is there where Lacazette is now. Alexis is probably there trying to bounce a ball off him. Ramsey's probably there, and Lenny's probably there. And then, that gives the Barry and Livermore and Krychowiak the chance just to squeeze everything together. That's why Arsenal's play gets so compacted when Giroud is playing, because he's brilliant at making that little through ball for the 1-2 that gets Alexis in there. But in terms of actually opening up the play, it doesn't work. And when that's Lacazette, he doesn't actually have to threaten to make that run. But the fact that Evans has to predict it and has to guess that, oh no, I have to hang back here because he might actually make that run. Then it's a case of Dawson has to commit to Alexis because he can't trust Evans to stay there. Which means Nyom has to do that because Alexis has to be double teamed at all times, which means whoever's there gets a free run. And that was the difference between Arsenal having a brick wall to run into again and again and again, and being able to keep the ball at will almost for 35 minutes. Not because of some magnificent tactical tweak, it's just numbers. And that will be something that Arsenal will want to work on in the next couple of weeks, especially when that person there starts with a big O instead of an E, where he's going to want to do the same as what Alexis does there, where instead of the ball goes that way, the ball goes that way, and it'll be Alexis running round the back of their right back. Is it going to work long term? Depends how comfortable you are with 1, 2, 3 and 4 at the back. Mustafi can't have games like that very often because he's not going to have Monreal playing as well as he did. If again, I've said it for ages now, if he turns into Azpilicueta, fantastic. But Mustafi has to be able to play his one-on-one battles a lot better than he did, because there's going to be plenty of times when Arsenal have 6 at the back, 6 up front like this, and West Brom going to counter. Last night they got away with it. It remains to be seen whether it works again. If you enjoyed this, get in touch. My Twitter is @Bradley08, and leave a comment and hope you liked it. Good luck.